How should a new regulator proceed? Let's think about that in this week's First Things First. I'm Alistair McIntosh. Welcome to this week's edition of First Things First. What's the question for today? It's how do you build an effective social housing regulator? Why am I asking that question? It's because the state government in Victoria and Australia is about to invest billions of pounds in new social housing. To go alongside that, they want a robust regulator. In Wales, the regulator has just written out to every landlord asking if there are any signs of the same sort of terrible disrepair problems ITV has exposed in England. And the new Director of Consumer Regulation in England is starting work. So it's very much a live topic. Where will I begin? I think the best place to start is by doing what's sometimes called a reverse stress test. What could that look like? How about this? Imagine you're sat in front of a parliamentary committee, a public inquiry, or in front of a TV journalist. What questions would you expect to be asked and how would you answer them? A regulator has to be in a position to deal with those questions, and it can only do so if each and every social landlord is giving that regulator the information it requires. So let's go through some of those questions. Question number one, how do you know that all the homes are safe and well maintained? That's at the heart of the letter the Welsh regulator sent out last week. And it's a good question to ask. What do you base that information on? How can you be sure the stock survey figures are accurate? And it's a tough old question to ask because you might not always like the answer. How will you meet the repair bill that is generated when you talk to social landlords about what they really need to spend on their homes? Question number two, let's go inside the building. Are you satisfied that every resident is being listened to and getting the service they deserve? We've heard a lot from shared owners over the last year or so in England, and that's not surprising. They're young professionals, they're very effective at getting their message across. Bluntly, they've run rings around the largest housing associations. Problems to be solved, but they've got a clear and powerful voice. What about some of the others? I think this is where Daniel Hewitt of ITV has done outstanding work. Remember the pictures of that young gentleman with breathing difficulties in a squalid flat in South London? He wouldn't get a hearing if it wasn't for people like Daniel. You go to the NHS, they've taken it a step further. They have appointed people with learning difficulties as fully paid advisors so they can tailor services around people with learning difficulties. Excellent stuff. They've started to treat folk as colleagues, not merely as patients. And you've got to be careful about some of the data you might collect. One of the landlords that's been exposed by Daniel on ITV reports to the board, reports to the regulator, that it enjoys 89% customer satisfaction with repairs. That makes the point. It's not enough to look at the data. You've got to get out in the States, you've got to talk to people and understand what services are like on the ground. Bring back inspection. Next question. Are you certain that services are run in a cost-effective manner, giving value for money? How do you know the costs of management and maintenance are at the right price and the right quality level? Never easy, but you've got to make progress on that. And how do you know that the regulator itself is cost effective and acting as a catalyst for positive change rather than an obstacle, a block, a drag on the performance of landlords? And then we turn to the tough questions, the really difficult ones that no one yet has a full answer to, but a regulator ought to be leading the charge on. The first of these is, how on earth are we going to pay for the costs of decarbonisation? It is colossal. We don't see a single business plan that will survive the full onslaught of decarbonisation costs without considerable support. The Royal Institute of British Architects has suggested that additional grants or cheap loans are required, but there is a very, very big bill to pay there. Where is the cash coming from? What will the regulator do about it? And then maybe the toughest question of all to grapple with: social mobility. What is the purpose of social housing? With each day that passes, the bank of mum and dad, owner-occupiers, give their children huge amounts of money, they invest it in assets, and they soar further and further and further ahead of the children of social tenants. How do we close that gap? We might not like the government's current proposals on shared ownership, but we have to find a way of spreading the jam. Thomas Piketty is, amongst others, saying that if we don't spread the ownership of assets, if fewer and fewer people have the capacity to generate wealth, the consequences for society are dreadful. So we cannot ignore the role of the regulator and the sector on that one. If we want social progress, we have to spread equity in some way, no ducking it. These are the sort of questions we will be discussing at our annual conference this week. I hope you book on, I hope you come, and in the immortal words of Fred Ponton, remember to book early.
And remember, book early.